I'm Belinda Ray. I'm here today with Kate Snyder, who last month finished a 4-year term as mayor of the city of Portland. We are going to talk to Kate today about the high points, the challenges, and what it's like to serve in municipal government in today's increasingly polarized environment. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to join the conversation. You can call us at 780-4909. That's 780-4909. Kate, welcome to today's show of Let's Connect Greater Portland.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's so good to see you. I haven't
too. Happy New Year.
Seen you for a while. Thank you. Happy 2024. Did you do any big celebrations on New Year's Eve?
New Year's Eve, not big celebrations. Champagne by 10, in bed by 11.
I beat you. I think I was in bed at 10. And no champagne. No champagne.
I don't know if I actually drank the champagne, but
Yeah.
no, not a big party on New Year's Eve. But so nice to have kids home and to have some time and space over the holidays.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And obviously, this is the first New Year's when you haven't been mayor for 4 years.
Yeah.
So now that you have finished your term and you're back to being Kate Snyder, Portland resident, have you noticed your perspective changing at all? Anything as you're thinking about city issues and kind of getting back into private life as opposed to public life? Anything you notice?
Well, it's going to be a transition, and I think that it has been a transition over a period of time, knowing that the end was coming. And yet there are no slowdowns, as you and I were talking about before. There's constant issues to react to. It feels like we're just in a never-ending cycle of crisis and challenges and things to work through. So I never felt during my term like, oh, now I can really slow down.
Right.
So knowing that I have been able to slow down over the last month, and like I said, having kids home for the holidays, and just kind of walk through that busy time without that feeling of responsibility and need to be constantly checking email and on my phone and responsive. And it's the kind of work that it doesn't matter what day of the week it is or what time of the if something comes up. You need to be available. So that has been really nice to be able to step away and just have that space.
Right. Yeah, you're not being bombarded with the issues and in the middle of thinking about an issue, bombarded with another issue. You probably have a little more time to kind of take space and take things in.
And I think it'll take some time to think through the things that I want to think through. That's the way transitions work, right?
Sure.
You can't sit down and say, okay, today I'm going to think about year one and what that was like and process that. And I've anticipated that the transition away from the work will take time, and it will come in moments when I maybe least expect to have a memory of something or to be, just processing through something. But as you know, and I know this from stepping off the school board after 6 years, the transition is immediate. It's like you're either in that role or you're out of that role, and somebody else has that role. And so I'm trying to be very thoughtful and just very conscious about that too. Like, people take that and they move, and the issues move.
Yeah. Maybe it's a little too soon to ask this question, but would you consider running for elected office again someday?
Well, I always try not to close doors on myself or anything else, and leave pathways open. So I don't have a good answer for you. I don't have a no, and I don't have a yes. I have a I'm old enough now to know that being absolute is probably not. It doesn't really serve anybody well. So I don't know. I am truly passionate about public service, and I am very passionate about issues. As you know from working together, and you and I know one another, it's not the politics that fuels me. It's not the adversarial nature of sort of coming at things and feeling like, well, I'm right, and I have to prevail on this issue. I like that does not fuel me at all. But what does fuel me is trying to think about this place where we live and the complexity of issues and how we tackle those issues together, because we have a really amazing community. And we're very dynamic and diverse. And so to think that there's any one right pathway to me is very simple. It's way too simple, because it's legitimate that people come to issues and to problems with different viewpoints and different proposed solutions. And so I've always said, and I truly think that compromise is required in this work, and that's how I approach it. And so it's very frustrating for me when maybe I don't get the sense that people are interested in sitting down and hashing through the issues and the problems, to the extent that there's open-mindedness enough to talk about compromise.
Right.
And so that part, like you said in your intro, the divisiveness is kind of greater than ever, and that's a shame, in my opinion, because the issues are too complex to be simple.
Yes, definitely. So it sounds like you expect over time, as you're going through this transition, it sounds like you're passionate about the community, the city, and issues as they come up. So it sounds like you are likely to remain civically engaged on some level.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know.
I'm not trying to get you to
at
commit
this
to anything.
at this moment in time, I don't know what that looks like.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I care, and you know, as I said when I was running for this job, my husband and I moved here in 1994. We've really built our lives here. Neither of us has ever lived any place so long. We raised 3 kids here, and they went to Portland schools, and I was on the school board, and you know, we did things like volunteer in the community. We always, you know, look back on when the kids were younger and doing youth sports and things like that, and being engaged as just really wonderful times. And so I think we both feel a lot of commitment to Portland.
Yeah.
And Portland is changing, no doubt about it. And it's funny to look back and think, you know, when my kids were little and I was on the school board, I was representing a younger, newer sort of person in Portland. I wasn't from here. And I felt that. I knew that. As a 37-year-old running for the school board, there were some people who looked at me and thought, well, you're not from here, and you're young, and you represent something different. Now I'm older, and I know that there are people who look at me as the old guard, which is funny to me, because I'm like, shoot, that all happened really fast.
Yeah.
But that goes back to my point about like the diversity and the dynamic nature of our community, is that there are so many people here that represent so many sort of origins and pathways and frames of reference. And so to diminish any of them, I think is, very limiting.
It's such an interesting, I love the way you just said that. It's a really interesting concept that all of us represent different perspectives, different things, different viewpoints at various stages of our lives.
Yeah.
It's kind of a Buddhist concept of kind of being all sides of an issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And how there's just no right or wrong. There's no kind of like, oh, well, you know, I'm this age and at this stage in my life, so I know the answer better than you. Or I'm young and I'm 20 something and I'm full of energy and I know the answer better. They're like, there's none of that. It just it doesn't. So I think if we allow ourselves to sort of yank on or hold on to myopia too much, it's not good for anybody.
Right. And I've often felt that we need all of those voices, right? We have the crazy, amazing young energy of, I remember myself as a 20-year-old and how certain I was of everything.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. But also just the energy that I had to put into things. And you need that as well as you need the wisdom of experience and the middle ground and just all of them coming together.
And this like sort of shared respect for just because I'm older and I have a little more, I have more experience, it doesn't mean my viewpoint is more valid. Just like if you're, you know, 20 something and like you said, full of energy and holding on to conviction that you really know the right pathway here. Leave some room for the fact that there's a lot of life to come and that you don't know everything. And so it is funny to be, you know, at this age and say, I thought I had a lot of certainty. And now that certainty gets blown out of the water, I think, when you're in your 40s and you realize, like, ooh, it was easier to think that I really had it. So anyway, life goes on.
Life goes on. So let's go back. I want to go back to the beginning of your mayoral journey. I think I understand what made you want to run. You've talked a lot about your passion for the community, and it's very clear that you want to be engaged. But I'm just thinking of that night when you're standing there at Salvage Barbecue, right? And you've just got all the results, and you've realized, oh my goodness, I've won. I've got this position. What was going through your head when you suddenly realized Kate Snyder has got the 51% and plus more?
It had been a long campaign. I was probably thinking,
I'll make the flashback. We're going back in time.
I was excited. I was excited to be stepping onto a council that I felt was a great council. I can't look back at that night without fast forwarding it. By 3 months and saying, oh my gosh. So maybe what I was thinking in December of 2019 was how exciting that I have the opportunity to work on things like improving bike lanes and pedestrian and cyclist access in Portland. I mean, I really, one of the things that I was thinking about at that time, and remember, we had a pretty good economy in December of 2019. We had, there was the ability to think about policymaking in a way that was 3 months from now we'll do this, and 6 months from now we'll do this, and the economy is favorable, and and all of those things came to a screeching halt. But I think in December of 2019, I always think about the budget, because I love the budget and I want to know what that biggest policy document is telling us about our priorities. And I was thinking about how can we as a community elevate access around our city and town for people of all ages, kids, teenagers, and adults, to make our way by bike and by foot that feels safer. And so there's a sustainability component in there that I know you're passionate about, and I am too, in terms of climate change. But the other piece for me is the safety piece. Can you send your 12-year-old off on their bike and feel like we have a bike infrastructure that will keep them safe? And I don't actually think we did, and I don't think we do yet. So that's something I was passionate about, I remain passionate about. But what I have certainly learned is that sometimes the priority you carry into work needs to be set aside in favor of the priorities that you have absolutely no choice but to address. I really believe, to me, that's the sort of kernel of public service is it's not about me. What is it that we need to do together right now? Yeah.
Do you remember after you were elected? And of course, there's a month between getting elected and then getting inaugurated. What do you think was the first kind of mayoral thing? So you come home after Salvage, you've rested, the results have settled in. What was the first mayoral kind of thing you did?
Things started up almost immediately, because as the newly elected, yet to be sworn in mayor, you've got requests to show up at parades and at functions and district meetings. And so the work starts pretty immediately, even if you haven't been sworn in yet. I remember going to most of the district meetings and various events, and then wrapping up the job that I was in, which was a full-time job. And so that was a very busy period from, early November to early December. And then, swearing in, and December is just by nature kind of a busy month. It was a really, really busy 2-month period, I think. And I probably rolled into January feeling like, oof. I remember, I've probably told you this story before, that I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and when I had graduated from college and I was moving to New York City, a couple of my sisters who are older than me, quite a bit older, said, "Look you don't know anything."
Thank you. You said thank you.
You don't know a lot. You don't know a lot. So when you show up for work, you listen. You listen.
Yeah.
Listen a lot more than you talk, and just do whatever they tell you to do. Just do the work. Do all the grunt work. Do whatever. You are... just remember that you're the low man on the totem pole. And so I kind of, I try to always remember that. Okay, if you're new at something, it's so important to listen. And so those first few months, my intention was, I'm going to take January, February, March, and I'm just going to listen, and I'm going to absorb, and I'm going to meet with people, and I'm going to do my best to understand this landscape so that I can be as effective as I can be. But I think without that foundation, my belief is that we benefit from a foundation of listening and trying to understand, like, how do I acclimate into this environment in a way that feels okay to the people around me.
Right.
So that's the other thing I was so conscious of. We've got city staff and sitting councilors that all know each other and all work together and they have a dynamic. And like, how do I engage in that in a way that feels productive and collaborative? And anyway, so roll through those months with that mindset, and then middle of March, everything changed.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that in just a second. I just want to let people know you are listening to Let's Connect Greater Portland, a show about the issues we face in Greater Portland and the movers and shakers leading the way. I'm Belinda Ray, and today we're here with Kate Snyder, Portland's former mayor, who just finished her 4-year term in December. We're talking about Kate's recent term, the high points, the challenges, what it's like to serve in municipal government in today's increasingly polarized environment. If you have questions for Kate, if you want to get involved in the conversation, you can call in at 780-4909. That's 780-4909. So yeah, you were saying you're trying to get in, you're trying to acclimate, and then, oh my goodness, what a year, what a year. So you were in office for about 6 weeks when the first case of COVID in the U.S. was reported. And it was only 14 weeks about when you had to make the decision with the city manager to close bars on St. Patrick's Day.
That's right.
So, yeah, you come in, you're trying to acclimate, and then suddenly, pandemic.
Right.
So yes, what was that like?
So those early days, those early detected cases, I didn't feel like they were squarely on everybody's radar. And we went to the National League of Cities conference in March down in Washington, D.C., and I really looked upon that as almost like, here's a turning point. We're getting out of town together as colleagues to do some learning and some listening and some engaging with others from around the country. When we get back from that, it'll be almost 3 months or around 3 months. It'll be that time to hit the ground in a new way, right? So I've got the first 3 months under my belt. Now, how can I start to exert some of the policy initiatives that I want to bring forward? And as you know, we were down there and meetings started getting canceled and offices started clearing out. And there was sort of a panic about what's happening. And we flew back along with our senators and representatives from the state of Maine, the congressional reps. And on the plane, I sat with the city manager and we talked about what might be the right approach and what are other places doing around the world and around the country. And that's when we first started contemplating this idea of a curfew. It wasn't a closure necessarily, but it was with St. Patrick's Day approaching, and we know people will be congregating. Right. How can we do something at a municipal level to keep people safe? And what we came up with was a curfew, meaning you can still go out, you just have to go home earlier, which looking back is kind of funny. Yeah. Right? Because people were still gathering. But I think the message was gathering is tricky. So we're gonna do what we can, and I know at that time the current city manager, who was the Corp Counsel, just went to work in such a rapid way to figure out how do we declare a state of emergency at the municipal level. When have we done this before? What does it look like? What are the guardrails? So everything just shifted at that point, and as we all know, we immediately went from meeting in person to trying to figure out the world of Zoom, And so I did chair meetings for 3 months in person, but then I spent the next 2 years chairing meetings on Zoom. Yeah. Weird. I know. There were counselors that I served with that I never sat with. Right. Right. Yeah. Never met in person until maybe, almost a year into service. Yeah. A real challenge. Yeah. And I just want to, it was so surreal, this concept of the pandemic. I can remember being in Washington and the National League of Cities conference rapidly shifted from here are all your scheduled speakers to here's an epidemiologist. Right. And we're going to talk about this. And we were all standing there in a hallway in one of the legislative halls, and someone got a tweet, we're supposed to stand further apart. So we all sort of spaced, and we're like, this is weird, really?
it's just amazing that the world that was ushered in.
Totally. The concept of social distancing, what
Yeah.
does that mean? And
Yeah.
I was thinking back to when we actually declared the limited state of emergency at the local level prior to St. Patrick's Day. We did that by holding a press conference in council chambers, which again is just kind of funny because we were saying, come join us in person as we talk about ways to keep ourselves safe by
Right.
staying apart from one another.
Right.
So yeah, it is surreal looking
It
back
is.
on it, and just again how quickly the issues came at us and how reactive we all needed to be.
Right.
All of us.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and yet we didn't. You and I were on the council together at that point in time. We didn't want to suspend the work of the municipality. We really couldn't. We had a lot of continued work, like the budget.
Right.
Right. You still have to have a budget, even though we postponed the final approvals on that. But we had to meet. In fact, we met more in the spring and summer and fall of 2020 than maybe ever, right? I mean, I just remember the weeks where we would have 3 council meetings plus committee meetings because we were constantly calling special meetings because we had something we had to deal with.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to touch on is that the pandemic really exacerbated housing challenges that we were already experiencing. Cities across the country were already experiencing these challenges, and they just got worse with the pandemic. And we have seen the level of homelessness increase exponentially, especially when we factor in asylum seekers, right, also arriving and needing places to live. So as mayor, that was another challenge that you had to deal with very quickly. And what did you see as the city's role in these issues?
Yeah, well, the role is complex, I think, and I appreciate you saying, what's the city's role? Because there are so many roles that various entities play, and the city's is one of them. It's not there's so many of them.
Right.
So going back to the earlier days of the pandemic, one of the initial things that we started to think about from a municipal standpoint was evictions, because people were not earning money in the same way that they had been pre-COVID because of layoffs, different job structures as resulting, closures. There was a great amount of suffering due to people losing their income.
Right.
And maybe the payroll protection program hadn't kicked in yet.
Right.
And so there was great fear about eviction. And one of the things that I did in my role was to at least say, landlords, please halt evictions. It's not a municipal issue. This is governed by state law. So people wanted the city of Portland to do something about evictions, but it's not within our purview from a legal standpoint. But we did speak out and say, please, if you can't, please be mindful of all the circumstances and the fact that people, this is a terrible time to lose housing. Right. So evictions were squarely on our mind. Like you said, then we started to see more and more asylum seekers very steadily. The summer of 2019 was a very isolated experience, pre-COVID, volunteers.
Right.
The expo was in use for a period of time, short period of time.
Right.
But then it was kind of like, blip, that, So then we fast forward to the summer and the fall of 2021, and we're seeing asylum seekers coming to Maine in numbers we've never seen before. And I always like to remind people, because we get a lot of pushback, Portland did this. Portland is a city that kind of created these challenges. Well, asylum seekers are here in the United States legally. It is a federal law that governs the flow of people coming in as asylum seekers. Unlike refugees, they come here with a different status. So they're here legally, but they have no support.
Right.
And there's no financial support that helps asylum seekers like refugees. And so under Maine's general assistance law, that's state law, we do not, as a town or a city, see somebody experiencing homelessness differently if they're from the state of Maine or if they're from another country. So I always want to point that out to people, that Portland, like any other town or city in the state of Maine, has an obligation under the state's general assistance law to help people in need. And that law does not tell you that there's a different approach, whether you're an asylum seeker, you're from the state of California, you're from the state of Iowa, or you're from the state of Maine.
Or in Portland, it doesn't tell you to treat people differently if they came from Falmouth or Presque Isle.
That's right.
Right? If they come from somewhere else in Maine,
right,
and they present first in Portland for general assistance, that's where they're going to get it.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. So people will often say, why are we helping people who aren't from here? Well, by from here, do you mean Portland, or do you mean Maine? Or do you mean New England?
Right.
Or do you mean the country?
Right.
Or do you mean the world?
Right.
Because the state law doesn't differentiate on those things. And so that has, obviously been a big issue that we've been dealing with in the city of Portland, trying to help people in the context of, we can't do congregate living.
Right.
It's cold. You need a place to stay. So that has been challenging, but I know that time is ticking. I do want to say that the expansion of Portland's commitment when it comes to emergency shelter is something that should always be noted. We are unique as a city in the state of Maine that we provide municipal emergency shelter to both individuals and to families.
Yeah.
The fact that Portland, over the course of the years 2019, 2020, 2021, really made planning and financial commitments and policy commitments to the expansion of the homeless services that we provide is it's important to note. I think Portland does a lot, and so when we moved the shelter from Oxford Street, a rented space on Oxford Street, to Riverside Street, Portland increased the number of beds by 54 and has continually done, has taken action to try to address people's needs. And so in this most recent situation that we find ourselves in with encampments and people living outdoors in tents, I want to go back to the spring and the summer and the fall when the city council made, there was very focused work. It was always on my mind to increase the number of shelter beds, because when we think about how to help people in need, what we've learned is that servicing people's complex needs out in tents doesn't work. But if we can get people into shelter, into emergency shelter that's supported by services and other outreach for people, then people's complex needs can start to be met. So when the council was asked to make a decision to increase the number of beds at the shelter by 50 back in October, and declined that expansion, and then was asked again at the end of October, it was very, very hard for me, because what I feel like we have done continually as a city is we've tried to meet people's needs very humanely through the expansion of shelter beds. We finally got that action in November and had the opportunity to increase the number of shelter beds and get people inside paired with services. So it's complex. It is continuing and complex, but I'm very, very proud of the work that Portland does.